So good afternoon, everyone. It's just after 1 o'clock now, so I think we should get started. Thank you very much for finding the time to join us today. My name is Simon Burge and I'm the Strategic Development Director at Chesington. The public consultation engagement on this project started around 3 weeks ago with Chesington Chat magazine advertising our initial plans to the local area, and this consultation process started formally. We've also created a web page specific to the project and consultation plans around the same time, so hopefully some of you will have seen that. Yesterday was the start of the 2-week consultation period with the launch of the project website, an online survey, and we hosted a number of face-to-face sessions as well yesterday in our Safari Hotel, which has already generated some initial positive feedback on the proposals, which is really good to hear. Today's session is aimed at engaging a wider audience virtually or remotely for those that were unable to attend the face-to-face sessions yesterday due to the COVID restrictions or other reasons, and to present our initial thoughts and ideas on the potential development of the site, to provide a new Amazon theme land and some exciting new rides, and then also to answer any initial questions that you may have. We will try to get through as many questions as we can in the time available. And we've muted microphones just so we don't have people talking over each other, but you can submit questions through the comments section, and that's the best way to raise a question, and we can go through the presentation today and we'll pick up all of those questions that were raised throughout the presentation at the end. In addition to the Q&A today, we'll also very much welcome your formal comments on our plans by the end of Monday the 31st of May. And these can be provided via the online survey on the website you use to access this live presentation. And we very much hope that you will complete the survey so your views and comments can be considered as we develop and finalise the designs ahead of submitting our formal planning application. So to set the scene a bit, today's session will have the following format. Firstly, I'll introduce the team in order for you to understand who's been working on the project, and that will include our architect, transport consultant, planning consultant, and our Merlin's Magic Wand project manager. And then I'll provide a bit of background about Chesington, the past year we've had to experience with COVID, and the importance of responding positively to make sure we continue to attract guests in the future. Thirdly, I'll explain a bit about the existing site before Smytheman, the architects, will take us through the current project designs and our initial thinking. We'll then provide some information on the current environmental assessment work that is ongoing and being done to inform the designs, and that will be certainly included as part of the planning application. And then finally, we'll outline the next steps for taking the project forward and a timeline, and then we can get into some of the questions that have been raised throughout the presentation. Just to let everybody know, this session is being recorded and will be posted on our public consultation webpage, hopefully from tomorrow, for people that couldn't make the calls today. So I think that's probably it, and we can kick off, having allowed a little bit of time for people to arrive slightly late. And I'll start by asking the team to introduce themselves, starting with Trevor.
Good afternoon, I'm Trevor Mountford. I'm the Managing Director of Smytheman Architectural, and we're the architectural consultants for the project.
Good afternoon, my name is Rupert Lyons. I'm a transport planning consultant with Transport Planning Associates in London, and we'll be undertaking the transport statement which will accompany the planning application in due course.
Hannah Whitney, Planning Director at Lichfield's Planning Consultancy, will be coordinating the planning application submission.
Dan Smith, Projects Manager for Merlin Entertainment, and I'm responsible for the delivery of this project.
Thank you, Dan. And if you can slide on to the first slide. So I just wanted to go through a bit of background for Chesington, those that maybe are not as familiar with where we've been. So we date back pretty extensively back to 1931 when we opened to the public as a zoo. The development history has shown us that over a period of years, particularly from sort of the 1990s onwards, that any areas where we don't invest in the resort, and this includes the look and the feel as well as the rides that we can provide to our guests, we do see a direct correlation in that impacting on our trading period. So we have to stay up to date, and we have to continue to offer our guests the products that are going to continue to get them to come to us. And that's something that part of my role at Chesington is to keep very much on top of, to make sure that we're anticipating things, and they could be rides that have to close early because of ride retirement, because they've been running for a number of years, all the way through to issues we have with particular rides and availability. So we're always looking ahead, but what we have seen is that where there are periods that we don't have the product to satisfy guests' needs, we do see a reduction in trading for that period. Connected to that, last year, as I'm sure for everybody, was a year that they've had like no other before, and it hit the leisure industry significantly, probably more so than most other industries out there, and theme parks was certainly included in that. So we have a graph later just to show you the impact of that across all of the resorts within Merlin, but it's a significantly challenging time for us having to be told to close, certainly, and operate to very fixed periods of times, but also now this year we're still feeling the brunt of the COVID crisis with regards to having to cap our visitation levels to make sure that we've got sufficient space around the resort for people to move around and be safe from a health and safety perspective. So we are operating at conditions that are not as favourable as they could be, and we have to be mindful of that. And then the final point is that Chesington has to respond to the continuing need to attract guests to us by providing new news. The Britain's Wildest Adventure theme has been something that's been running through Chesington for a number of years now, and it's very popular. And the blend of animals with rides is one that certainly is exciting to a lot of our guests. And all future developments, including Croc Drop, which launched last year, and Tiger Rock 2 years before that, are certainly in keeping with the sorts of things that we'll be moving forwards for the resort as we look to develop year on year. Next slide. So a little bit of background about how we work with our local authority and the council, and how we look at things very much on a kind of strategic 10-year basis rather than a kind of much more shorter year-on-year outlook. So we submitted a long-term plan to the council in 2016 to basically be fully transparent and show exactly what our aspirations were over the next 10 years. And as part of that, it allows us to plan for the investment and go through the appropriate sign-off processes we need in order to get capital expenditure secured to pay for the rides and attractions and infrastructure that we need to improve for site. So we submitted this in 2016, and there are a number of sites you can see shaded in yellow on your screen, and these were called development envelope sites that we'd already identified as part of this documentation submission of areas that we'd look to develop in future years. And site number 7, which is probably the most pertinent for today, is the site we identified back in 2016 as being a prime opportunity for a new family thrill roller coaster at the resort, and this is what we're here to talk to you about today. A number of the other sites around the resort have already been developed to some degree with the launch of our high ropes course Go Ape in the 60-acre wood. We've had planning permission to do some lodges developments in site number 1, and obviously glamping, which has been with us for 2 or 3 years now, site number 2. So we've started to systematically work through this development plan, and this is the latest development that we want to share with you. Thanks, Dan. Just to give you a bit of an idea as well of some of the economic benefits that were identified as part of that long-term process and included in our long-term master plan. So employment at Chesington, obviously as a major regional theme park, is quite significant. We have up to 250 permanent employees, and in the peak of summer another 1,200 seasonal. So all that works out to approximately 915 full-time equivalent employees for those that are familiar with HR working practices. So that's pretty significant. A large number of those do come from the local borough and surrounding boroughs, including Epsom and Ewell, Claygate, Leatherhead and Mole Valley. So that's obviously a strength and something that we want to continue to support, and the more development and opportunities we can create at Chesington, then the more jobs will accompany that as well. Connected to that, we also, when we build anything new, we actually have an impact on the wider construction markets, and we'll look to use local construction firms wherever we can. So there's a lot of additional secondary spend that goes out into markets around Chesington as a result of the work that we do. Next slide. So what I wanted to do now is just go through the actual proposal site, and if you go to the next slide, Dan. And here you will see, for those again familiar with the main entrance, the Explorer entrance to the theme park, on the right hand side you've got the A243 Leatherhead Road, and you can see the Monkey Puzzle Public House and the Premier Inn Hotel just below that, and then the main entrance which comes into the theme park, which is our kind of peak visitor entrance for theme park days. As you come into the main entrance, we've got a number of viewpoints, photos that I'll show shortly following this, but you can see a very clear red line that highlights the development boundary site that we're talking about today. And this has largely been used for a number of factors. So the bottom area, where you can see the number 4, which we have a photo of shortly. This is a kind of back of house, out of customer view facing area where we currently have some shipping containers for storage, and it's where we operate our park presentations, recycling and sustainability drives. So all that is essentially behind a big wooden fence that you wouldn't see from the park facing views that I'll show you shortly. Just above that, we call this the picnic field on resort, and this is typically where in the summer months where we have higher volumes of customers on park, we'll look to provide some temporary additional attractions for guests to enjoy. And some examples here, as you can see in the photograph when this was taken, we had an inflatable obstacle course, and we also had an oversized kind of sand pit with children's play area just to the right of that as well. So this is a bit of a flexible area that's been open and been grassland for over 20 years, and when we operate it and we use it for additional capacity soaking rides as we need to. If you just want to go on to the next slide, Dan, thank you. So here's a view inside the resort, and for those familiar, if you go down that path on the left hand side, that could take you to the Vampire at the back entrance, and your back would be heading towards Treasure Chest and the main kind of Market Square area. But if you look straight ahead there, you will see the wooden fence in the background, some temporary attractions right in front of you there, which is the beach who I talked about before, and you can see some very sort of medium aged trees that are just on the outside of the pathway. If you go to the next slide, please, number 1, I think. Yeah, so this is a view looking down the picnic field. It's close to the Dragon's Fury toilet block, for those familiar with that, and is the main entrance where you come into the theme park. Where you come in from the Explorer entrance, this is your first kind of view on the right hand side, and you'll see from this photograph that the gradient of the field is quite steep, and there was a number of kind of additional opportunities that we've used that gradient to satisfy some of the challenges we wanted to overcome as part of this application, which we'll talk about later. And then in the far distance, you can see a big wooden fence, which doesn't look particularly sightly at the moment. That is the fence line that just screens away from all of the shipping containers and sustainability efforts that the team work with behind that fence. Next slide. Okay, so this is a picture that I'm not particularly proud about, but this shows again a better view of an area which is not customer facing and currently being used as a kind of storage area with a few out of kind of date containers that need to be moved. But this is another area looking from inside, photo number 4 for the image on the top, where you can see where the image of the land will be. Next slide. And this is if you come immediately off the A243 Leatherhead Road, come into the theme park. This is the first kind of drop-off car parking area you'll come to on the right-hand side. And just above the Get In Lane sign, which you can see in the centre of your screen, you've got some trees there which are not in leaf. That's it, just being highlighted. That is essentially the land in question that looks straight into the main theme park area before you go through the main car park barriers to enter the car park. Thanks, Dan. And I think this is the final photo, just giving you an idea of the location. This is taken from within our McCaw car park, which is the lowest car park in Explorer, looking through into the Zebra car park with just a temporary sort of hard standing there, looking into the main outer perimeter of the theme park by the Explorer entrance. And again, you'll see a number of tree lines before you can see into the main theme park. So that's the last visual we've got on that. So the next stage really is I'm going to ask Trevor, our architect, to go through some of the ideas that we've been talking about, and then some of the other members of the team will pick up the next steps as well. Thank you, Trevor.
Okay, thanks, Simon. So the first slide, this shows the site proposals as they are at the moment, as they currently stand. So the proposal is for one main hero ride, which will form the perimeter of the site and follow basically the outline of the site, and then within the site we'll have two more what we call flat rides, which are the smaller scale children's rides, 1 and 2, as shown there. We're envisaging at the moment that there'll be an entrance portal somewhere opposite the Dragon's Fury ride, so guests will come in there, and then immediately facing them at the southern end of the site, on the lower side, will be a large animal sculpture, which is be in line with current features on attractions around the park. So what we'll have is on the main ride, the guests will be propelled from the car, go through various banks and turns, then they come to a dead end just up above over the animal feature, and then the ride will stop there, and then it will go back in reverse all the way back into the station. The exact details of the proposed children's rides are yet to be confirmed, but they will be the smaller rides, like I say, in similar to Sea Storm and Jungle Bus, which are currently on the resort. There'll be to maintain the jungle theme. There'll be a lot of landscaping going on, a lot of planting of more mature plants, so that we've got the immediacy of the jungle experience as soon as the attraction opens. So next slide, please, Dan. So these are some views from within the land. So this is visually standing dead centre of the land, looking out towards the entrance portal, which we can see the rectangular shape in the background. With, like I say, we've got some extensive planting to create zones around the land as well. Next slide, please, Dan. So this is again from the same viewpoint, but turned through 180 degrees. So we'll be looking down the site towards the main animal feature. That's just a placeholder at the moment. Obviously, that's still in consultation to decide what that's going to be. And then we can see the top end of the ride there, the track just finishing above the central feature. Next slide, please, Dan. And then this is just looking at the station building. So we're currently seeing the building as being quite an open aspect. Rather than being a building, it's more a station platform with some sheltered areas, some covered ways over. Next slide, please, Dan. So this is an artistic visual of how we see the station coming together. So again, what we're going for is just like a jungle encampment sort of feel, with plenty of wood, some faux thatching on some of the roofs, and possibly some palm weave and that sort of effect. Next slide, please, Dan. These are just some samples of the types of ride that we're looking at the moment. Can we go back one, Dan?
Yep. Is it?
142.
Can you not see it?
No. So I've lost the screen. I've got the mood board. Have we got the? Yeah. On the there's a screen which shows there's 4 selections of 4 examples of the flat rides that are currently under consideration. Say these are indicative of the sort of things that we're looking at the moment. So it could be a balloon ride or Super Miami type of ride, Squid Surfer, or the Super Jumper sort of ride. Next slide, please, Dan. And then this final slide is a mood board, which gives us the flavour of what the land's going to look like, with a lot of naturals like wood and stone finishes, and again, heavy emphasis on the planting to create that central, that essential immersion within a jungle. feeling when we're in there. And I think that's everything on the architectural side.
Thank you, Trevor.
Okay.
Hannah, do you want to talk about environmental matters?
Thank you. Dan, would you like to go on to the next slide, please? So there's a number of environmental matters that we need to consider when we're designing a new attraction at the resort, and one of the key elements is consideration of views. Chessington benefits from significant existing boundary landscaping, which has been planted over many decades. Whenever Chessington proposes a ride or attraction with taller elements, we always consider how it can be designed and accommodated on site to minimise views to areas beyond the theme park. In this case, the roller coaster layout has been carefully designed to make the most of the change in levels on site, with the taller coaster elements, the ends of the track and the themed animal feature on the lower and southern part of the site. The proposed layout ensures that the majority of the structure will be screened from external views by existing boundary trees and landscaping. Where there will be glimpses of up elements of the track and theming, they will be seen in the context of other existing rides and man-made features in the landscape. So this plan shows a number of views that we've tested in the surrounding area. The green arrows that you can see show where the proposed development will be completely screened, and the red arrows, of which there are 3, identify where there are only glimpses of the upper elements of the track or theming that will be visible, and these 3 positions are along the Leatherhead Road. If we can go on to the next slide, please, Dan, and I can just talk through some of the photography and initial work that we've already undertaken as we've been designing the proposed attractions. So the photography that we've taken was undertaken in the winter just gone, so it represents what we call a worst case scenario because it's a point in the season where there's no leaves on trees. So it's the worst case scenario in terms of visibility. And as you can see from the top photograph, there aren't any leaves on the trees when these photographs were taken. The proposed development has then been superimposed into an image to show effectively an after image, showing that the roller coasters will largely sit behind the existing trees in the screening. Dan, I don't know whether it's possible just to go back to the previous slide, if that's possible, and I can just talk through the views that we've identified on these slides. So this view here is the furthest view from the south on the Leatherhead Road. So it's the A243 and it's to the south of the Shy Horse pub. So you can see at the bottom image here that we've got the roller coaster that's been superimposed. That will actually sit behind the vegetation that you can see in the midground of that image. And what this image shows is that the coaster high point will be the very upper elements that will break the skyline, but the young clump of conifer trees that you can see in the foreground will largely obscure them in due course. So it'll only be the very upper elements that you'll be able to see in the early days of the development. I'll now move on to the next viewpoint, which is the A243, and that's at the BP garage. You can see from this view that most of the ride is hidden behind the existing Chessington shelter belt and by closer planting and buildings that we've already got on site. And you can just see in the image at the bottom there, we've got the roller coaster track, which will be screened behind the existing landscape and buildings that we've got in this part of the area. Moving on to the next viewpoint. So this is viewpoint what we've called 2.3, and this is at the Malden Rushet area of the A243. In this view, the coaster track high point just breaks the tree line, but not as much as the mobile mast that you can already see in the background through the vegetation, which is on the nursery site. The young foreground vegetation will remove this view in due course, and it will be largely screened from view. And then moving on to the next and last view. This is on the A243 at the nursery. The coaster high points will be completely concealed by the mature trees that we've already got on the Chessington shelter belt. So the ride will be completely hidden from this viewpoint. And you can see there we've got the yellow roller coaster that's been imprinted onto the photograph at the bottom, and that will sit completely behind the nursery and the vegetation that we've got in the background there. So moving on to the next slide. So I've touched on the views and the work that we've done to make sure that the coaster design is largely screened from external views. This image is an artist's impression of the emerging scheme showing the proposed jungle theming. As you'll have seen from earlier photographs of the site, whilst the site benefits from a lot of planting on its boundaries, within the site the existing tree planting is actually quite sparse. It is likely that some existing trees on the site edge will need to be removed to accommodate the structural supports for the track. However, this won't affect the existing landscaping screening that I've just talked about, and in particular the screening of the important view lines that exist to the south and the southeast of the site, because that vegetation will be completely retained. Any tree loss will be minimised through the ride design, and it will be significantly offset by the extensive new tree planting that we're proposing as part of the immersive Amazon theming within the site. So overall, there will be a significant overall increase in trees and landscaping on the site.
Thank you, Hannah. So we're just going to hand over to Rupert now, who, with any development we do on site, obviously transport's a consideration for us, and he's just going to walk through a section on transportation.
Thank you, Sir Simon. This slide tells an interesting story, and it provides the evidence base for what Simon was saying in his introduction. If I can ask you to focus on that sky blue line at the bottom there, that's the data for Chessington in terms of visitor numbers, and if you ignore the dramatic but understandable impact of the coronavirus pandemic on visitor numbers, you can clearly see what Simon was saying earlier, that the regular provision of new rides and attractions since 2012 has been an essential requirement in maintaining visitor numbers. Interestingly, they're still significantly below what was being achieved in the 1990s, and you can see that the peak occurred there in 1995. It's also noticeable that the absence of the provision of new rides and attractions between 2001 and 2006 led to a significant decline in visitor numbers. Thinking back now to Chessington's long-term plan, Project Amazon featured then as plot number 7 in the transport study that was undertaken by consultant Atkins in September of 2016. They determined that it was likely to increase visitor numbers by about 5.3%, with peaks of 48 arrivals between 10 and 11 in the morning and 37 departures between 5 and 6 in the evening on a typical day in August. Those values fall to around 16 arrivals between 10 and 11 and 20 departures between 5 and 6 in the evening in a typical September day. In that context, it's also important to note that Project Amazon doesn't include for the provision of any additional car or coach parking. And as I said earlier, we'll be undertaking the transport statement that supports the planning application when it's made. But unsurprisingly, perhaps our interim conclusion, as you might expect, is that we don't expect Project Amazon will have a materially adverse impact on the transport or the local highway network. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rupert. One of the other sensitivities that we're always paying attention to as well for the local area is noise, and we've got a slide on noise that Hannah's just going to talk through as well now.
Thanks, Simon. So the noise survey work is underway and a noise assessment report will accompany the planning application. The initial work that has been undertaken has identified the nearest residential properties. As you can see on this plan, these are the key residential areas that are closest to the site that have been identified. So we've got the properties on Barwell Lane and Almshouse Lane to the north. We've then got the properties on Chalky Lane to the east, and to the south we've got the properties on Fair Oak Lane. So the noise limits will be established that the development will need to meet, and these will be agreed with the council. It's not anticipated the attraction will be louder than other rides at the theme park. and actually because it's a new ride, its working parts will be much smoother than some of the older historic rides that we've got on site. So when in operation, it should be less noisy compared to other noisier rides that are at the site. To conclude, we don't anticipate any additional noise effects compared to the existing attractions.
Thank you, Hannah. So this last slide that we've got to go through now, it just gives me the opportunity to set the scene and show you the roadmap for the next couple of years. And it formally started yesterday with our 2-week public consultation period. So we had the sessions in the hotel face to face. We've now moved on to today to do some virtual presentations, which allow people that couldn't attend yesterday to hear our plans today. We'll then allow 2 weeks to run the consultation period, and we're going to look to close that on Monday the 31st of May. That will allow us then sufficient time to collate all of the feedback, which we very much hope we'll get from everyone that's attended any of the presentations, or indeed just comes onto the website and looks at the additional information that's going to be available from today as well. We can collate all that, feed it into the responses, and then that will allow us to submit our final and formal planning application to the council. We're hoping early part of July. So once we've got that in, it will then go through a statutory determination period. We're hoping that will be only sort of 8 to 10 weeks in duration. That will allow us to get a decision sometime at the end of October, end of September, early October, and then that will allow us to go through a bit of internal governance just to then get formal kind of sign off of the development proposal, and to basically get money to pay for the scheme to start the building, which again we're hoping we can commence from January in 2022. And as soon as we get that concluded, we'll be looking to open the new land to the public as soon as we can. So that gives you a bit of an overview as to what the next few years look like in regards to this. But obviously, with a development like this, it does take a little bit of time, so we're just going through that process now. We've covered quite a lot today, and there has been an opportunity for questions, and I can see a number of you have submitted questions, be they anonymously or by name. So what we're going to do now is to take some time to just go through those questions, and then we can pick them up specifically, and then I can also signpost you to some additional information that's going to be on the website as well for more information of what was covered today, and then plenty of other bits as well. So if we just go to Amy, I think has been collating all the questions.
Yeah, so first up we have a question about noise, which I'll direct to you, Hannah. We've been asked by Steve, how much screaming would you expect this type of roller coaster to induce? Also, is the launch mechanism itself expected to generate significant noise?
Okay. I will start off and answer a few queries on that, but I might actually hand over to the design team just for a bit more of the techie side of things. But just as a general summary, as we mentioned before, we don't anticipate that the new attraction is going to be any louder than any other rides at the theme park. Because of the design, the ride itself is likely to be quieter in terms of the mechanism in comparison to the older rides, such as, for example, the vampire ride that we've already got on site. So from that point of view, we don't anticipate that there is going to be any additional noise beyond the existing environment effectively that we have at Chessington. And I don't know whether Dan or Trevor have got any more information they wanted to add to that on the ride side of things.
Yeah, no, that's a good point, Anna. We don't anticipate this being any noisy than either rides on park, and the launch mechanisms, the mechanisms we're proposing to use are relatively off-the-shelf mechanisms that don't really contribute to any increased noise footprint.
Thanks, Dan.
Great, thank you. Next question we've got from Paul. I will direct this to Trevor, I suppose. Are we able to confirm that this will be a 1.4 metre height restriction ride, i.e. a thrill ride, and whether this will be a launch coaster rather than a lift hill?
Yeah, well, happy to confirm that it's going to be a 1.4 metre height restriction for the ride. As to the method of whether it's a launch coaster or whether or not it's going to be on a lift hill, we're in talks at the moment with quite a number of ride manufacturers. So and that's all part of the discussion at the moment. So it will depend upon what's selected at the end of the day.
And just to expand on that point, so the brief for the development is that we are very much looking for a family thrill ride, and hence the 1.4 stipulation. But as Trevor's already said, there's a number of other things that we're still in hot negotiation with. Thank you.
Thank you. Hannah, I've got another one for you. Do the greenbelt restrictions require specific measures to be met to allow the development?
Okay. So as was noted in that question, the site is located within the Greenbelt, and in policy terms, it's identified as what we call a previously developed land. So it's a site within the Greenbelt that is classed as previously developed land, and within these areas, planning guidance identifies that redevelopment and infill developments are appropriate where they don't have a greater impact on the openness of the Greenbelt than the existing development. We'll be undertaking a comprehensive Greenbelt assessment as part of the planning application submission, and if any harm is identified, then there will be a requirement for us to demonstrate that any harm is outweighed by very special circumstances of the development. So there will be a very comprehensive assessment that will be submitted as part of the application.
Great, thank you, Hannah. This is possibly one for Simon. Are there any plans to incorporate animal exhibits into the area, like Chessington has done in other areas, like Tigers and Tiger Rock, lorikeets and Wild Asia, etc.?
So it's a really, really good question, and certainly we've seen lots of success with the blend of our animal wild adventures theme with the rides and the ride hardware. The balance that we always have to strike is making sure that the scale of attraction is appropriate to have animals in close proximity. So as you would expect, we have specific considerations from our vet and our zoo team to make sure that they're completely happy with what that would be. So it's fair to say we will explore it, absolutely, because we know that when guests can get to see animals and experience a ride, their experience on park is certainly increased. But there are a number of factors that we have to consider to make sure that it's the right thing to do before we go ahead and do it.
Great, thank you, Simon. One for Rupert. Do you anticipate many visitors and lots of additional traffic as part of the proposal?
In short, no. The previous work identified the visitor numbers would increase as part of Project Amazon by just over 5%. But I think the important thing to note, both in terms of the time of year, i.e. the month of the year, and the time of day, is that the traffic associated with Chessington tends to sit outside of the regular highway peaks. So in terms of the overall impact on the network, I don't believe this will be noticeable at all. The morning peak for the park tends to be between 10 and 11 o'clock, so that sits comfortably outside of the morning peak on the network. And interestingly, traffic flows or background traffic flows in August tend to be lower anyway. So at our busiest time, that corresponds with a less busy time on the network.
Can I also just expand on that point as well, because we did have some reasonably significant development works as part of connected to our longer term plans identified in 2016 to do with the trackways in our Explorer car park, which went through a formal planning application process and was granted. And what that has enabled us to do, for those that have experienced our southern car park trackways previously, which were in a pretty dire strait and not good for anyone's car's suspension particularly, and was something that we've always wanted to sort out. We managed to sort it out in 2019 with some nice clear tarmacked and curbed entrance trackways, a lot more in keeping what you would expect for a theme park. And what we saw was, and as we'd hoped, was that the opportunity for cars to pull off the A243 at a greater speed, because they weren't slowing down for potholes and things like that, enabled any kind of traffic delays caused by the resort in the Explorer entrance area for sure to significantly increase, and to the extent that we're looking at it now and we've certainly not seen any impact on that this year. So I think whereas before increasing traffic has been a consideration, I've always been of the the belief that it's more to do with getting the traffic off the road quickly, and our car park development in 2019 has been a massive step in the right direction in that regard. Thanks, Amy.
Great, thanks both. Another question on the design of the ride, which I'll hand back to you, Simon and Trevor. On the artist illustrations, there appears to be a number of rolls and inversions. This, coupled with the 1.4 metre height, would suggest a thrill ride with some sort of twist or inversion. The station looks like it also may host a winged coaster. Is this something being considered?
Dan and Trevor, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, I'll happy to take this one. Yeah, again, like I confirmed earlier, we are looking at a 1.4 metre height, and it is the intention for it to be a family thrill ride. As far as whether it's a wing coaster or not, we're out with several manufacturers, as I've said earlier, and the process is that they will come back to us with their proposals of what can be done on the site. We've just shown that layout of the track to show the footprint that we want it to take, and that will be the area for the ride. So I shouldn't read too much into what we've shown at the moment. It's all quite hypothetical and high line, apart from that's where it will go. Okay.
Needless to say, the earliest opportunity we would have to start to talk in a bit more detail once that's been confirmed about the great new ride that we're hoping to provide, you know, our marketing teams and our PR teams will be doing that. So as soon as we can get the message out there, we'll certainly be doing it, because we want to, you know, we want to tell people about the new ride at Chesington. Thanks, Amy.
Great, thanks, Simon. I've got another one for you. When do you expect the area to be open and the ride operational?
So that's a good question. It's dependent on two main factors, well, three if you include the actual planning process and the application itself. But depending on that going to plan and us being able to get an answer to our planning application in the appropriate timescales, and considering the sign off for the actual scheme, which is a bit of a formal process that I have to go through with the senior management at Chesington to get our group colleagues at Merlin to sign off formally the spend to build the ride, and add that the construction period, which Dan Smith, our project manager, will oversee. We're expecting that you know, that could take anywhere between 12 months to 18 months, depending on the complexities of construction. So we are looking to get it open as soon as we possibly can, but there are a number of unknowns at the moment that it's impossible for me to give you a kind of even an approximate date. Ideally, it would be great to get it open in 2023, but that could be 2024. So we're gonna work through those things as best we can, and once we've got some certainty, again we'll come out and we'll be shouting quite loudly to say that this is going to happen from this date.
Great, thank you, Simon. Those are all the questions that I've received. Thank you all very much for your questions. I'll give it a second just in case anyone has any last minute queries. We've had quite a few technical questions about the roller coaster itself, such as will it contain an inversion, is it a boomerang, how the propulsion will work, and what kind of model roller coaster it will be. So I'll field that to Trevor.
Thanks, Amy. At the moment, we're talking to several coaster manufacturers about the design of the ride itself. So what we've briefed them with is the layout that you've seen on the screen yourselves, and it's like said that the parameter is that we want the coaster to be sited here around the perimeter of the site. So the process is that they will come back with our requirements, and then they will suggest to us what the layout could be and what features, whether there's inversions or steep banking and that sort of thing. So it all depends really upon the final selection of what's offered by the various manufacturers. As for it being a boomerang, again, you know, presumably you're referring specifically to the Vekoma boomerang type of ride. Again, we can't really say at this stage which manufacturer it's going to be or what style of ride it will be. Likewise for the propulsion system, again, that's out there. There's various forms of propulsion, as we all know, and we're just waiting on the manufacturers' proposals, and then a decision will be made about who's got the most compelling proposal that we think will fit the site and the theme of the project. Hopefully that answers those. Thank you.
Thank you, Trevor. Just another.
Can I just expand just slightly on that, Amy? Thank you. Sorry,
Yeah, no problem.
I was on mute. I knew there'd be at least one instance of that. Just to expand on what Trevor said. Look, from a Chesington perspective, as soon as we're in a position to be able to share all of the detailed information about what this amazing new ride will be and can add to Chesington, we will absolutely look to share it with everybody. There are a number of steps that we need to go through, which are, you know, cost considerations, ride manufacturer availability and lead time considerations, and not the small matter of, you know, of getting the application through the local authority. So as and when we've done all that, and at the stage that we can then have a bit more certainty about what we're going to be delivering, then we'll look to get that out in the public domain as soon as we possibly can. Thanks, Amy.
Great, thanks, Simon. A question for you, actually. We have a question from Dan asking why we're putting in a coaster which could have low capacity compared to something with a higher capacity. The park already has a lot of low capacity rides.
So clearly, ride availability and rides per head and ride throughput are all three incredibly important variables for us. As part of the selection process of what we can provide, we have a very clear objective on what we need to deliver through ride throughput, which will enable our guests to have a good day on park and make sure they can be benefiting from a ride per head figure, which is relevant to what they're paying to come into the theme park. So we're always very, very wary of that. Depending on what different manufacturers come back with, and dependent on what the higher throughputs can be, will obviously put certain manufacturers at a higher kind of level of interest to us. But at the moment, as we still don't know what that is yet, it's a fair question, and it's certainly a consideration that we go through for any ride. But at the moment, this for us is a new ride, of which we've not had anything like this since the introduction of Dragon's Fury, which was back in 15 years ago now. So this is quite exciting for us, and we'll be getting as many riders through it as we can as is possible.
Thank you, Simon. Another one for you and possibly Dan. Two questions really on Chesington in general. Why have an Amazon themed land when you already have an area called Rainforest? And once construction starts, will there be any major impacts to visitors in the rest of the park? So
I'll take the first one. Dan, you can take the second one. Okay. So it's a good question. So the Rainforest has been successful. It has created an identity for our two smaller rides, which are very much looking at our younger guests. This new land is looking at an older age range. So whereas we had the very small log flume and joined up ride connected to it, this is a bit more age appropriate. So we've got some ideas on the mix of wild adventure that we have with some of our wild animals that are around the park as well, and how we can use that to good effect to create a pretty immersive area. We've seen some success with it on other areas and other rides around the resort, and so it's a bit of a continuation on that. So that's why we've landed on this particular theme. And construction, Dan?
Yeah, so I think we're quite fortunate that the proposed location of the construction site is, towards the edge perimeter of the site, and our project delivery teams are well versed in, delivering significant construction projects in the live theme park. So through the use of kind of construction hoarding, we're looking to hoard that area off safely and minimise any disruption to guests, and making sure that all construction traffic will be moving in and out, not over guest walkways and towards the perimeter of the site. So no, we don't envisage any significant disruption to guest activity during the construction period.
Great, thank you. Are there any plans to include animals within the area, Simon?
So yes, so as I mentioned in the previous answer, we've definitely seen a correlation between animals and rides coming together and an increase in our guest satisfaction performance. So where we can, it's a very sensitive area, as you would expect. We are a zoo fundamentally, with theme park interspersed with it. So where our vet and where our zoo licensing arrangements will allow animals to be situated close to attractions, we can look to do that, and that is purely dependent on the nature of the animals. But is a fair question, and it's certainly something that we're looking seriously at, because we know the benefits of having the animals and the rides together. It's all dependent really on what scale of animal would be appropriate in this particular area, and we've obviously got some species on the resort already, so there's always an opportunity to move some things around as part of the process, but it's something that we would certainly be sharing in due course.
Right, thank you, Simon. A couple of more questions about the ride itself and the land. If I could send this to you, Trevor. Are you able to give a height requirement or audience age of the new main coaster? And also, for the land, you've outlined flat rides and the roller coaster. Are there any plans to introduce new food and beverage merchandising outlets to complement?
Thanks, Amy. Well, for the height requirement, as Simon sort of alluded to earlier, it's the land is really aimed as a family thrill ride, so the height requirement will be 1.4 meters. So it's the older children who will be riding that ride. Sorry, what was the point about the flat rides?
So we've outlined flat rides and the roller coaster, but are there any plans to introduce food and beverage and merchandising outlets?
Well, the site is still in development and the brief. So at the moment, again, we've still not fully explored that side of things. There may well be, or it may be decided that there isn't. That's more of a commercial decision, I think.
So I can just sort of provide a bit more context on that. So if we're talking about a new restaurant or a new significant kind of F&B unit or retail unit for that matter, then the answer would be no. Based on the size of the site, what we want to do within it, and the cost considerations for the project, we are going to be quite tactical about how we do that. We've also got the opportunity of some relatively close kind of F&B opportunities that we'll draw on, but the opportunity for some smaller kind of takeaway-esque, more mobile units may well be something that we will explore.
Thank you, Simon. Another couple for you, actually. Would the coaster have major marketing like croc drops? And with creating a ride for older guests, if this goes well, will we see investments in new attractions such as thrill coasters?
So, so the first part first. So we've definitely seen, having launched Croc Drop this year and the response we've had, which has been absolutely fantastic. We've seen, what good theming can do around, a standard drop tower. So there is definitely appetite to look to take that to every level possible. So in line with our wild adventure theme as well, the animals are an integral part of what we do, which I've mentioned before. So it's certainly fair to say that the use of animals in this land will be important and will be explored. And the second question was
creating rides for older guests. If it goes well, would there be investments in new attractions such as thrill coasters?
Okay, so that's a good question as well. The reality is, Chesington World of Adventures is fundamentally target market is sort of the 4 to 12-year-old sort of primary school, first year of secondary school. That's our target market. We do have some legacy rides, including the Vampire, that have been with us a long time, and they're very popular. Would we ever move to compete with the likes of Thorpe Park with significant kind of hardware and thrills of that nature? Highly unlikely, on the basis that they're part of Merlin already and they're quite close to us, so why would we? So I think where we are currently is to further grow our family-based thrill kind of market based on our wild adventure theme, and we'll look to provide new rides where we think there are gaps. And I can't stress this enough, the fact that we've not had a significant coaster at the resort for over 14 years is significant, and we've been long overdue one. So this is a really kind of important moment for us to be able to introduce a new piece of hardware that's going to really be fantastic and put us back on the map a little bit in terms of what riders come to theme parks for, with the benefit and the additional of a couple of children's smaller rides that will also make up a nice dwell time in a new land.
Thank you, Simon. A couple of more questions for Trevor. Just again on the design of the ride, will the ride be full circuit and will it be a wing coaster?
To address the first point, at the moment, what we're looking at it being an out and back ride. So we're the feature that we're looking at is the actual full stop above the animal sculpture. As far as the wing coaster aspect of it, as I said earlier, we're talking with a number of different ride manufacturers at the moment, so we just don't know at this stage what type of coaster, what form the car will take.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
And then another one on the design of the land. Will there be plans to add anything extra to it, or just the paths and trees shown in the images?
At the moment, it's the tree, and again, this is all quite preliminary at the moment. So the intent is that we do get some nice, slight immersive feeling in there. So with some planting and some little breakout sitting areas. But as apart from that, at the moment, the intention is the one hero ride and then just 2 flat rides. Thank you.
Great, thank you. One for you, Hannah. Isn't the site in the Greenbelt? What are the implications of this?
Thanks, Amy. Yeah, I can pick that one up. As noted, the site is located in the Greenbelt, so in policy terms, that's a significant sort of planning designation that we need to address in any planning application. The site is what we refer to as previously developed land within the Greenbelt, and within these areas, the planning guidance identifies that redevelopment and infilling developments are appropriate where they don't have a greater impact on the openness of the Greenbelt than the existing development. We'll be undertaking a comprehensive Greenbelt assessment as part of the application submission, and if any harm is identified, this will need to be outweighed against the very special circumstances that surround the development itself. So that's something that we'll make sure we'll be undertaking a full assessment of when we submit the application.
Great, thank you, Hannah. Coming back to you, Trevor, which manufacturers have we submitted the brief to and are we in talks with?
At the moment, there's quite a number of people that we are talking to. We've got people such as, we mentioned Vekoma earlier, somebody asked about the Boomerang, Mack, B&M, Gerschlauer, Art, I think, are in the mix. I'm not sure if there's any more at the moment, Dan, that we can reveal.
No, I think they're the key headlines, really, Trevor's. Yeah, but as I said, there are others we're exploring. As you know, to Trev's point, we're not leaving any stone unturned at the moment. The key is to hit the brief and the creative appeal we've shown on those. But as I said, we're exploring, you know, what any manufacturer can offer us to hit that brief.
I think the other thing I would add, just on specific towards manufacturers, obviously Merlin, as a big entertainments company, has lots of opportunity to put lots of coasters in lots of sites all the way around the world. So all of those conversations will be, you know, joined up. We won't be going off on our own, having those direct conversations. That they will happen as a result of much wider considerations for the group as well.
Thank you, Simon. One question for you on programme. When do you think the land will be completed?
So that's a good question. There are a number of factors that will feed into that, including the speed in which we can get a determination from the council. Hopefully it's positive, but you know, there's a chance that it may not be. The actual sign-off process in regards to getting the capital expenditure released, as you can appreciate, you know, this is a significant investment for Merlin and Chesington, so there is a pretty diligent sign-off process that needs to happen to get the money agreed. And then, not least of which, you've got the construction of a whole new land, of which we've not done at Chesington for a long time. So we do have some good access, which is a fair point that Dan's mentioned earlier, to get to the site that doesn't impact our guests on any particular basis. But there's quite a complex construction program that would need to be assessed, and that will kind of determine how quick we can get the land open. But I can assure you we'll be wanting to get it open as soon as we physically can.
Okay, thank you. And just another quick one for you. There was plans for the lodges showed in the development plan. So I was just asking for a bit more details on the lodges.
Yeah, so we submitted a planning application for a lodges development back in 2018. 19, I think it was actually, that was successful, which was great news. So I think what we've had to balance with is the COVID impact for last year and the capital expenditure on our accommodation scheme. So it's still an opportunity for us that we are discussing, and we need to then kind of weigh that up with additional capital expenditure that is going to get invested at Chesington as well. This project being a significant part of that, to work out exactly which order we want to do things, and what's most important to the business at any one moment. So at the moment, it's still an application that we've received and positively. So as and when we can share more about our new accommodation lodges development, I will be sure to share with everyone.
Great, thank you, Simon. Just one last question on the design of the ride for Trevor. Will the roller coaster have launches?
Again, everything's in the mix at the moment, so we are considering, there could be a launch coaster, or we could be looking at something with a traditional lift hill. Again, that's all to be decided when the actual final ride selection's made. Thank you.
Great, thank you. We've had an offer to write the theme for the land from a music composer in the audience. Simon, I think you're on mute.
Yeah, if you want them to get in touch, use the consultation email address. I'll be happy to push that in front of the right person that would need to see that offer, that kind offer.
Very nice. And just another question: would the land affect any rides and attractions in the surrounding area, like Dragon's Fury?
So no, one of the benefits of this particular site, and as highlighted back in the long-term plan that we submitted in 2016, the benefits of the access into and out of site are obvious, which means that we are lucky enough to be able to create a brand new land, not only a new ride, but a new land with a few rides in that won't impact on any of our existing rides in the immediate adjacency, and that would include Vampire, Griffin's Galleon, and Dragon's Fury. So everyone will be pleased to hear that they're all there for the foreseeable.
Great, thank you. A question for you, Hannah, on noise. Will the development generate lots of noise? You mentioned the coaster, but what about the round rides?
Okay. So as I said, there will be a noise assessment that will be undertaken as part of the planning application submission, and that will consider the noise impacts from the roller coaster, but also from the round rides themselves. The round rides are very much supporting rides, so they're sort of low scale, small impact in terms of the attractions themselves. So it's not anticipated that they will have a significant impact on noise. The overarching assessment is being undertaken, but we don't consider that there's likely to be any noise impacts beyond the existing sort of background levels that we already have at the site. And I did mention about the operation of rides on site as well. Given that these are new rides that are being proposed, they're much quieter in terms of their mechanisms than some of the older rides that we have at site. So from that point of view, it will be sort of the quieter rides in their own sort of structural integrity. Dan, I don't know whether you've got anything else that you wanted to touch on just in terms of the round rides and the children's rides themselves.
Yeah, no, I think you've covered it off,
Okay.
quite nicely, Hannah. Yeah, these rides are relatively simple from a kind of engineering perspective. Their noise footprint's typically minimal, so we don't anticipate any adverse noise from the flat rides that we're looking to shortlist.
Great, thank you all. One for you, Simon. Will the park's maximum guest capacity be increased following the opening of the area?
So that's in terms presumably of the COVID impact and the fact we've had to restrict visitors. So we're very much hoping by the time we get this land open that we won't be under the requirements of capping visitation at the resort. I expect it to be with us for the foreseeable future, certainly for the next few months of this year. but hopefully before the year end we'll be reverting back to something a bit more like normal. But obviously we'll need to follow government guidance and we'll do everything the right way. But certainly I would very much hope for 2022 we'd be able to open the theme park as we would normally for any normal theme park season without any capped visitation numbers. So that would certainly be in advance of opening a new land, so there should be no impact on that whatsoever.
Mm-hmm. And branching off that, would the area be designed with COVID in mind?
I don't think so is the honest answer. We've managed to change some of the specific ride elements to croc drop for this year as a result of some kind of retrofitting to allow that to be a bit more COVID safe. Certainly in the queue line as well, we've got some enhancements there. If we're still in the world that we're in, then absolutely we would take the opportunity to factor in various different requirements that will enable us to use queue line turnbacks in a COVID safe way, and potentially even on the actual coaster itself and smaller rides as well. But I think that's a bit of a we have to wait and see where we are, certainly the end of this year, before those final details would need to be submitted to any manufacturer for a build period.
Thank you, Simon. And this is a blend of noise and design point. Will the track be filled with sand to avoid extra noise, or has this been considered? Pass that to Trevor.
Sorry, Amy, I missed a little bit of that then.
Would the track be filled with sand to avoid extra noise, and has this been considered?
Well, obviously the noise generation is always considered when we go out to the ride manufacturers. Now, whether or not the track is one that's capable of being filled with sand or whether we need to be, again, it all very much depends upon who we end up with. But it is something that is always considered.
Mm-hmm. And will you be looking to ask people such as locals or coaster enthusiasts about suggestions to the layout or the land?
Well, very often the ride layout is obviously that's determined by the ride manufacturer about what they can achieve with the obviously the momentum and the energy that we need to get around the track. As for asking enthusiasts about the land, that's probably one back to Simon for further consultation, I think.
I think if anyone's got any suggestions on what they'd like to see and what they would hope to kind of experience when they ride the coaster, then I'm more than happy if they want to submit some ideas to the email address. That'll be absolutely fine, Amy.
Great, thank you, Simon. Just one for you. What will be done to blend areas with one another to stop areas such as Mexicana from clashing with one another?
So as part of any good theme park, the identity of the different theme lands is quite important, and it's something that we've been working quite hard on the last 2 or 3 years. Every season you'll go through a period in the closed period to refresh areas and make it revitalized, ready for the next year. But in order to create an identity, and we're very much looking at this as a new land with its own identity, completely different from all of the others that we've got elsewhere on park, as part of that process, it's going to be imperative to create a very clear, wow, when you walk through the entrance to the new land. We want people to realise they're in a brand new element of Chessington that they've never been before. So the current locations at the moment, it benefits pretty much from being adjacent to the kind of Wild Woods back end of the Vampire area and Land of the Dragons with regards to Dragon's Fury. So I think we're in a good area where we can create a bit of identity and a bit of a wow as soon as you walk in.
Thank you, Simon. Just a final question on the design. Do you think a splashdown or waterfall element would fit in?
It's a good question. I don't know if water's been considered, to be honest.
No, I don't think it has. As I said, no options off the table. But yeah, it's probably less likely that option would be considered to be in fitting with the theme.
Thank you, Dan.
Great, thank you very much. As Simon said earlier, if you've got any further questions, we do have an email address on the if you want to take up the previous slide, Dan.
So yeah, so just to conclude then, as we reach the hour point, so I'd like to thank everyone for the questions that have been submitted, be they anonymous or by name, where you've been comfortable to do that. They are very helpful so we can understand what we need to consider as part of the application moving forward. But as a bit of a reminder, all of the information we've gone through here and more is available on the website. So if you just go to the place that you access the presentation, you'll see a link directly to it, and you can take some time to go through that. And an integral bit of that really is a final request for you all to complete a feedback survey, which again is connected to that web page that you visited tonight, or you can email the consultation email address, which is showing on the screen there, which is consultation@chesington.co.uk, because your feedback and views on our proposals are very important, and it enables us to kind of create what our customers and guests want to ride when we get there. And finally, can I thank you all on behalf of the project team and myself for your interest and attending tonight's presentation. I appreciate it's early evening for most of you. Hope you found it useful. And on that basis, I'd like to wish you all a good evening, and look out for plans coming very soon. Thanks very much, guys.
Thank you.